I'm Julie Herman of Jaybird Quilts. Welcome back to the Night Sky Sew Along. Today we're going to work on cutting the shapes needed to make the stars of the Night Sky quilt. Let's get started. We're going to start with one colorway. So in this situation, these 4 fabrics are what I'll be using to make one group of stars. And then we also need to cut some of our background fabric. So the first thing to do is to cut the strips, and that information's in your pattern. But I'm going to show you an example of cutting a background strip. One big tip that I have for you is not to trust the lines on your mat. This mat is upside down right now because I don't trust the lines. Unfortunately, they're not always printed. Every brand is a little different, as accurate as your ruler is, and trusting the lines on your mat can cause measuring issues down the road. So whether you're working on my quilt, like today we're doing Night Sky, or any project, I always suggest that people do not trust the lines on your mat. Always trust the lines on a ruler, and if you have trouble not defaulting to that, cutting on the back of your mat is a good option. So we want to cut our strip from this, and this is the end of mine, so there's just a little bit left. So all I'm going to do is make sure that I have one of my lines on the fold up there. You want to make sure that you're not like this because you don't want to end up with a V in the middle of your strip. So I'm going to line that up. Trim that excess off. Flip it over. Line it up to the width described in the pattern. Trim. Throw this into my scrap bin. Now we will get started on cutting our shapes. The information that I'm going to be going over is on pages 5, 6, and 7 in your pattern. We're going to begin on page 5. So let me get my fabric so that I can show you what we are going to do. So I have one strip here. People often ask if they can cut multiple strips at the same time. You can, but I suggest, especially if this is new to you, starting with one strip at a time until you're familiar with the ruler. Best to try it out that way. Then you can do layers, but also keep track of your pattern because you're not necessarily cutting the same things from every strip. So that being said, I'm going to show you right-handed, and then I'll go over what you do for left-handed. I am right-handed myself. So the pattern shows the cutting directions right-handed. So if you're left-handed, I just suggest taking the pattern, turning the pattern upside down. Then the orientation of the pattern diagrams will be correct for you. So got my strip. I'm going to go ahead and line up my solid line. And I'm going to move as far over without going off so that I don't waste, if I do this and got a random piece and I want to get the best yield possible from this piece. So I'm on my solid line there, base of my ruler is on the base of my fabric, and I'm just going to trim. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to rotate this piece 180 degrees. And I'm going to realign my ruler, and I'm going to use the 3.5 inch solid line that goes all around here. If you end up here, let's say your 2.5 line, or over here, your 4 line, if you don't see a solid line that you're not in the right place. So you need to see a solid line around your shape to make sure you're in the right place. And cut that diamond. Of course that happens. And go ahead and continue cutting diamonds down the length of this strip, but we're not necessarily going to cut them down the length of every strip, so go ahead and follow your pattern for the directions of how many you need. Once you have those cut, if you've been around with some of my projects, other projects, you might be tempted to cut the tips off. It is not necessary in this project. You don't need to take the time to do that. In this project, it's fine to go ahead and leave them, and I will show you why when we get to sewing. So go ahead, cut all the diamonds you need, stack them up, and move on to the next shape. We're now going to go ahead and cut our star points. And in order to do this, we need to make sure that we follow the pattern. And the pattern tells us to have 2 pieces of fabric with the wrong sides together. So we're going to take one, flip it upside down, take the other, place it on top. So if you can imagine, if these were one fabric, it's how it comes off the bolt. So we have 2 fabrics, wrong side together. And what this will give us when we make each cut is a right half triangle of our fabric facing us and a left half triangle of our fabric that's facing down. So the first step is we're going to square up this edge. So we're just going to take our ruler like this and trim and rotate this piece around. Make sure you don't shift it. If you have a rotating mat, that can be handy at this time. Line up the ruler so that the solid line for the half triangle is all the way around. And cut. Rotate the ruler around 180 degrees. Cut. And repeat these steps down the length of the strip until you get enough pieces as directed in the pattern. You will have a right in one color and a left in another color. And if you did gemstones, you might be tempted to sew these together. Do not sew these together. They don't go together. They look like they might, but they don't go together. Your construction will be harder later on if you sew these together, and you'll have to take them apart. So do not sew these together, but go ahead and make sure that you have your rights and your lefts. So the same is now true of my pink fabrics. I'm going to go ahead and cut my half triangles from my pink fabrics. Where's my other one? It's over here. So I'm going to have half triangles from all of my pink fabrics and my orange fabrics, as well as diamonds. If you are left-handed, you'll begin like this. To cut diamonds from this fabric, I'm going to line up my ruler, and the base of my ruler will be at the top of my strip with the 3.5 inch line here at the base of my strip. Go ahead and cut, and then take this strip, rotate it 180 degrees, line the ruler up, so 3.5 inch diamond like that, cut, and work my way down the strip. And then for my half triangles, just like we did for the right-handed, wrong sides together, 2 layers at the same time. Go ahead, first step is to square up this side of the fabric. Then go ahead, rotate it 180 degrees, take the ruler, line up the 3.5 inch half triangle, trim, and rotate the ruler around this way, the length of the strip, until I get enough pieces. And if you have any questions, please let us know. We're here and happy to help. Now I'm going to go back to page 6 to cut my half triangles from my background fabric. And this is as easy as what we did with those. And this is already folded off the bolt, wrong sides together. So just keep that as it is. Usually I have you unfold everything and cut one layer at a time. You want to keep this folded as it was on the bolt. Square it up. Rotate it around. And trim. And same thing, we're going to work our way down the strip, and you'll get a right and a left each time that will eventually get paired up with those. So go ahead and follow your pattern on page 6 to cut the number of background half triangles needed. Once you have cut all of your pieces for one colorway, this is the result of what you should have. I have them laid out here as shown on page 8 to make sure that I have my rights, my lefts, and all of the pieces that I need. Go ahead and cut the pieces for all the colorways that you plan on using in your night sky quilt. I suggest that you wait to cut your frame fabric until after you begin piecing your blocks, as you may change your mind on what size quilt you want to make, and not all of the quilts use the same size frames. Thanks so much for tuning in here today. If you've enjoyed this video, please be sure to like it, leave a comment, and subscribe. You can also turn on notifications to this channel to be alerted when a new video is available. We would love to see your night sky pieces. Share them with us on social media using the hashtag #NightSkyQuilt so that we can see the fabrics that you're working with. Thanks again, and next week I'll be doing a live video, a Q&A for any questions you might have on cutting. The Q&A will happen in the Facebook group, and then we'll post a recording here. So if you have any questions, please leave those in the comments. See you next week.